People believe that the finer the bubbles, the better the champagne. But it's actually the opposite. Don't be afraid of aging champagne. Champagne has an amazing aging potential, like completely unsurpassed, I think. Okay, maybe some sweet wines. Let's say if you want to buy a special champagne to celebrate wedding anniversary, kid's birthday when they turn 18 or 21, buy a magnum of a great vintage champagne, and you would be happy to have listened to this advice. I think one positive aspect of climate change is that we can declare, in a way, we could declare more often vintages. So you have more possibility to choose which vintage you want to declare. You know, back in the 80s, if you would miss one vintage for whatever reason, the next one, good one, could be 3 years after. If you would ask me at the beginning of the harvest if we would declare 10, I would say, no, impossible. But when we tasted the base wine, it was like, wow, this has really some good, looks like there's some good potential, so let's make it. And when we released it, it was like, wow, this is amazing.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to No Sediment Wine Podcast. And today my guest is Frédéric Panaïotis, chef de cab of Ruinart House.
Hello.
Hi.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
So we will start really slow. I just wanted to ask you about your wine journey, how it started and how you ended up here in Ruinart.
I think my wine journey started officially on two occasions. Christmas 1985. At home, we opened a bottle of Richebourg 1976 from Gros, which my uncle brought for that special lunch. And it was the first time a wine tasted more than a wine. You know, it was so aromatic. I remember it very vividly. I could describe the color, the glass, the flavors. I was like, wow, you know. And I was a bit over 20 at that time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And then a few weeks later, coincidentally, I studying at the agronomic school of Paris. We had a chance to follow a 3-week course on viticulture and winemaking. And at the end of the course, we did a trip to Champagne and Burgundy. And at the end of the trip to Burgundy, we went into a cellar. I forgot the producer, but the owner kindly opened, very kindly, or shared, I should say, because I think beauty of wine is about sharing. He shared one of the 3 Jeroboam of 1969 that he had left. For us, poor students who were not going to buy anything because we were broke. And the wine was like, not only amazing, but the moment was crazy. And I thought that generosity, you know, that the fact we're ready to share for free, in a way. And I told myself, if this is the world of wine, I want to be part of it. And that's basically when I decided to do a specialization in viticulture and winemaking in Montpellier, at the agronomic school of Montpellier. And voila, that's how it started. But I probably had some, you know, seeds in my body, as my grandparents had a vineyard in Champagne. So when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I used to go harvesting, but I never thought back then that could be my job in the future.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you had Greek heritage.
I do, but I'm second generation.
Okay.
So my grandparents, as my last name, Panaïotis, shows it. So my grandparents on my father's side were born in Greece, moved to France to settle and escape their country, basically, especially my grandfather. And so my dad was born in France, but you know, that's I have 50% of my blood is Greek, obviously, but I never lived there. So
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
But I do love Assyrtiko, you know, Mavro Daphne, Xenomavro especially. So there's I do love those autochthonous grape varieties for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Malagosia, I should, for my friend Joe Vassiliou. Yeah, I do love them.
And how you started your career here in Ruinart. So you've been quite a long time here already.
17 years. I joined May 2007. Yeah, after my studies, I wanted to travel, so I went to Hermitage. I love the wines from that area, from Northern Rhone. Then I went to the US for 3 harvests, which was great in Northern California. And when I came back, I worked for the Comité Champagne, learning about different techniques. And I ended up joining Veuve Clicquot, kind of a cousin company. We are part of the same group, Louis Vuitton with Hennessy. And so I spent 12 and a half years there. And then the position opened here as cellar master, applied, and got the job. And I have to say, I'm very happy here.
Well, Ruinart house style is very much loved, and we will talk about that later. But how would you define Ruinart style? What is the key elements that shape it?
There's quite a few, but I would say Chardonnay is in a way the golden thread, where all of our cuvées have quite a bit of Chardonnay. When the 3 cuvées we can see here are all Blanc de Blanc actually. So this has been the case since after World War II. So not since from the beginning. And the other element which came with the Chardonnay was to make a wine that's in a way easy to appreciate. That's very friendly, nice texture, aromatic freshness. So not heavy, not old school, but quite modern in style. And we really try to grasp the fruit so that I like to call it simplexity, because it tastes simple. I mean, it's simple to understand, but it's quite complex to make, And I often make, if it would be music, I think we would be Stan Getz, Jazz that everybody loves, but the composer was amazing. He was also a great saxophonist, but it's kind of easy listening. So that would be a winner.
Okay, but I will want to talk with you about the Ruinart house style a bit later. But Ruinart house is also amongst the leaders when it comes to sustainable practices. I think in Champagne and also like amongst the winemakers and like wineries in general. But you also source grapes from growers, and I wanted to ask you, like, how do you ensure that your sustainability values are upheld by the growers? Is it like lectures or I don't know?
That's a tricky question, and we are far from being perfect. We still have a work to do, so we pay extra. Actually, all of our contracts that we have with growers, the Ruinart contracts, we ask the grower to be either certified with a VDC, Viticulture Durable en Champagne, so that's sustainable viticulture in Champagne, or organic. So that's a mandatory. But as you say, we want to go a step further. So there are. We have this plot in Tessy, in Premier Cru, not far from us, where we experimenting pretty heavily with vitiforestry, because this really, we believe in this way to have better soils, better resilience of the vineyards, and we do show what we do there, and we encouraged. We actually pay if they need to make to have some hedges and some consulting, but I have to say we need to do more. I think we need to really make sure that they fully commit to it. And it's, to be honest with you, it's not always easy.
Okay. So do you feel like there's sometimes pushback from growers?
Or
they don't understand or see the value?
It starts compromising their harvest, and I understand. And we have the same issue. If you ask them to do things that can really compromise their work and the quantity of grape they have, I understand that the position will be, are you sure you want to be, I don't want to go there. And that's totally understandable. So you have to find a way that where they can be sustainable while keeping a decent harvest, It's easy to lose the harvest here. We saw this year in 2024, some people going to, like organic farming for the first year, they lost everything or nearly everything. That's not sustainable. Part of the sustainability takes environment, social, and economics.
Yeah.
If you want to be a sustainable restaurant, but end up doing things that bring no customers, what do? You close the restaurants. That's not sustainable. So you always have to. Sustainability is in the middle of that, and people sometimes only see the environment part, but it's more complex than that.
I completely agree with you. We so often talk about sustainability in the environment, but we've always forget about the economical sustainability.
Absolutely. And social.
Yeah.
That's also, And we see, let's say we stopped using herbicides in 2020, but with the rainy years we've had, weeds and like more than big weeds, been growing like crazy. Mm-hmm. And socially, the growers said, stop. There's some areas where we need to maybe come back from it and say, okay, I understand in this situation with this equipment, you can't go there. It's too dangerous. It's not socially acceptable that you can't put workers at risk. Mm-hmm. This is not sustainable. Same thing. And so we say, okay, in that circumstances, maybe we will have to use herbicide because there's no other solution.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's being a bit broader and a bit smarter about what sustainability is really about.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. I also listened one other podcast interview with you on Guildsom, and you talked about how the growing season is becoming shorter. So instead of 100 days, you mentioned now the average is around 87.
Yeah.
I think you said something like that.
It is, or 86 even, maybe the 10-year average. So the average of the past 10 years, I think it's either 86 or 87 now.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, how does that impact the grapes, or maybe the quality of grapes, and then potentially style of the wine?
You're touching a very important point about climate change, because we often speak about higher temperatures, early harvests as a consequence of it, balance in the grapes with less acid and things. But I think this shorter growing season is probably the biggest concern that we should have. And we should do everything we can to extend it. If you look at the origin of grape growing in Europe, all the varieties were chosen specifically to a region, because you would harvest them between, let's say, 15th of September until 15th of October. And that was giving more or less 100 days between flower and harvest. Maybe by, it was just a rule of thumb or intuition, but that gave great results. But it also meant that in some years, the crop was bad. Like the harvest was poor quality because it didn't ripen sufficiently. But when you had this long ripening season, it came at the right level of ripeness, it would make amazing wines with longevity. With climate change, especially with higher temperature, as we lost so we went from 100 days to 87 days. That's like nearly 3 weeks, not quite, but nearly. 2 good weeks, less. And so I think that the whole balance, or the whole expression of each of all varieties, but it's true in every region, is threatened, because this long cycle means you reach more of the physiological ripeness, and not only the ripeness of sugars, and what we call chemical ripeness, like sugar acidity level. It's like technological ripeness, and you need both together, and you get it when you have long growing seasons. And we see it when we have those harvests that take place 80 days or 82 days or 83 days. It can be very difficult it can be very tricky to find the right date of harvesting, because you need to choose in a way between sugars and acidity, and if you don't want to go too high. And they have the same issue in the south of France. If you start harvesting Grenache at 16%, like, I'm not sure you can make amazing Châteauneuf du Pape, and so this is probably a threat for the future. And how can we change? That's the thing. What's the solution? We need to find ways to extend the growing season. So it could be selections of all current varieties, selection massal or clone that ripen later, and this probably exists. Maybe other varieties, for the future. That's not something we need to rule out, and this is experienced and experimented by the Comité Champagne. But also our growing, the way we manage the vineyards, and so a few things have been done. You may have heard of the vignes semi-large. That's one possibility, those. So we typically reduce the density, and the way they are managed is they're higher above the ground. The vineyards are higher, and fruit, instead of being 50 centimeters above the ground, is like 80 centimeters, and that makes a big difference. The higher the climate, the warmer the climate, the higher you should put your grapes, because they will have a cooler area. There's quite a big temperature difference between 50 and 80 centimeters. Maybe more leaves. I don't know. We need to look at different techniques. I think our technique has proven to be very, very resilient here in Champagne. We still have cool years, 24, 23 in a way, 21. So the change is not like this. The change is like up and down. So we can't change so quickly, and we need to adjust. But we need to find solutions to, in a way, lengthen the cycle and go back to the 100 days. I was doing a seminar recently, and I showed 2002 vintage, And 2002, which we all wrote, it's a warm vintage, the wines are pretty rich. 99 days, 99. So nearly 100 days between blossom and harvest.
Yeah.
You look at it and you go, wow, back 20 years ago, it was still kind of the norm.
I love that vintage, by the way.
Yeah, 2002 is amazing. But and 1990, 110 days, I think, or even more, 110 days. And they are harvested in October. We have this less and less, actually. You see the shortening of the cycle. So temperatures could be carbonic gas concentration, which has been increasing. Does it change the speed at which the plants are growing? Could be. Not to be ruled out as well.
That's something I haven't really focused on even. But you mentioned the widening, the rows. I actually wrote the question here because there has been a lot of speculations. And the last time when I was, I think in Epernay, I even saw some stickers against that. No? So I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what were the key motivations behind this decision and how you see this impacting in the future?
Two ways of the different ways at looking at it. Climate is changing. We're in a changing environment. If we don't change things, we're going to go in the war. So we need at least to experiment, at least to look. This wider spacing has been experimented for 15 years. I think there were 400 tastings. Some of them showed a difference in triangular test, scientifically experimented, but never any preference. I mean, what else do you need to say, okay, this technique can be used? It was voted and it was actually agreed. Okay, there are people who are against it, but we don't force them to use it. It's not obligatory, but I think it's a way to have a better resilience with climate. And I remember that also some people want to have more density.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? They can check. But if you look at vineyards in the south, they usually have wider spacing. So it's, I don't know, but to me it doesn't look like it's the solution. But let's try. Why not? You're free to experiment. So let's experiment. But if we don't change, for sure, we will not be able to mitigate and adjust ourselves.
Okay. So I will not name any names, but someone told me that he thinks or considers this might be kind of move towards mechanization.
But mechanization of what?
I don't know. Maybe harvest. We were discussing this.
We could mechanically harvest today if we want to. We don't need that change to mechanically harvest. And of course, mechanically harvest, that's a big no. Yet it's not part of the appellations. But again, we should at least know that if we want to show that it's not good, then let's try. Okay, I've made sparkling wines in California. And I've been helping also in New Zealand, making sparkling wine with mechanized harvest. Honestly, it's possible. I don't think it's as good as hand harvest, but I think it's possible.
Okay.
So I'm happy that we stick to hand harvesting. But what about if in the future, because of climate change, we can't harvest during the day because it gets too hot, and this will happen in a few years. Or let's say we can harvest less hours. If the grapes are coming in at 30 degrees plus, what about harvesting at night with machines and get cool grapes instead of using cooling equipment? That's not very good for carbon footprint. I think we should at least experiment. I'm not saying we should adopt it, but we should be ready in case one day it becomes not sustainable. To have people harvesting at 40 degrees outside. We had a few cases of insolation, with harvesters.
Yeah.
I think we should, or at least be in a position where we know why we don't go if we don't go.
Yeah.
And not saying it's bad, before. Yeah. But I understand the resistance, and I definitely, technically, I think hand harvesting will be always superior. But what about if we can't do it?
That's true. That's a really good point. Yeah, sometimes when it's just too hot, I'm person 24 is my comfort zone, and when it's close to 30, I just cannot.
Well,
function.
imagine, but it was full. I mean, no, it was, and even for the grapes, when you get in grapes that are at 30 degrees plus, and then you let them sit for a few hours in the press center before you press them, they can degrade very, very quickly. They can, I'm not sure this is, technically, we need to see, technically, is it better to harvest grapes at high temperatures and let them, or harvest them at night with a machine at 15 degrees, because that would be a cool night, maybe 20, I don't know, and compare them. We should know, but yeah.
Very good point. Thank you. So talking about the style, so I actually mentioned to you off camera that Ruinart was really hot topic in my local sommelier chat. And everybody loves the style. They can never get enough. So this is part of the complaint. And I wanted to ask you, in this changing climate, now, what are the biggest challenges that you are facing to retain that unique style of Ruinart?
Excellent question, which it comes exactly 9 years after my boss asked the same questions in 2015. Well, actually nearly 10 years. Following the harvest in 15, and I was showing to the management team that, it had been a very extremely hot and dry, especially dry summer, and that was bringing new issues for us winemakers. And at the end of the presentation post-harvest, he simply asked me, the style about Blanc de Blanc is about what we call aromatic freshness, like, very geared towards fruit, very clean, very bright, very lifted. And he said, but if climate becomes so hot, how can you, like the word freshness doesn't work anymore, right? And I was like, good point. Okay, but initially I said, don't worry, we know how to blend years. That's the beauty of champagne is like the art of blending. We blend different years together to create those non-vintage, and we can, in a way, mitigate the differences between a warm year and a cool year, big harvest and a small harvest. That's an amazing advantage that champagne has, savoir-faire that champagne has developed. But he started to, put a little thingy, like a seed in my brain, and saying we need to do something. So I spoke with my team, and the idea came to create a Blanc de Blanc that would reflect the climate change. And we came up with this idea of Blanc Singulier, which is this one here, where in the warm years, in the year that's either a warm and early harvest, sometimes both, but not always, we isolate the wines. And now we also try to understand which grapes give this kind of wine. We know that it's correlated, but we want to know more about, how it works exactly. So, but we isolate wine that show that extra ripeness, extra warmth from the vintage. And instead of blending them, instead of making them disappear, we just put them together. We work on a different reserve program. We use a bit of oak. We have a perpetual reserve. To get more structure and texture element to it. And we age it a bit longer. And the idea was like, if we do everything right, maybe we can lower the dosage. And we know it's a trend, we're traveling, we listen to sommelier. And we know that some sommeliers, sometimes customers, I think more often sommelier than customers, want to have a brut nature because it's so cool to have something with no makeup. And but I could not compromise with the Stangate style. I don't want to make free jazz. We had to make a Blanc de Blanc, maybe possibly without dosage, but that was still friendly. And with the help of, in a way, those warm year, it's actually an extra aging. It's been very successful. So we launched this wine we had a prototype 17 edition, which was early harvest, but not so warm. Then we had 18. 18 was one of the craziest year here in terms of, super warm. We had like climate index that were through the roof. 19, warmest year on record. I mean, warm highest temperature on record in Champagne, 43 degrees nearly.
43.
42.9. In the courtyard here, it was 45 or 46.
Oh my God.
In August. Yeah, so this is reality, but it was 3 short hot spells. But and the result has been very well received. It's very limited, so not available everywhere. Only in a few countries. Only for restaurants. That's been our strategy. But it's a proof that if you take the most affected grapes from the warmest year that we've known, you can still make this. So in a way, it's a message that first it's a wine champagne that says, listen, something's happening. We couldn't make this wine 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. This is new, and this is the reality of climate change. So that's a warning. But at the same time, it showed that in the future, if the norm is 18 or 19, but look, guys, we can make this easily, But if it's way above the norm, because if the norm is here, it means there will be.
Yeah.
If the average is here, it means there is some extra years. I mean, there are, this I don't know because we've never had them. So we will need to figure something. That's why we need to experiment. That's why we need to try. Because in those years we will need new answers, which we don't have yet.
You mentioned briefly the aging on the lees. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you this because early in my career, when I just started to learn about wine, including S.C. Evelyn, which we spoke about before, said that the quality actually in champagne kind of comes from how long have you been aging the wine on the lees. And now I see the trend changing. There's so many growers that are releasing, single vintage champagnes, but they do not age it as long, so they cannot label
because they have lots of requests, which is very good for them.
Yeah, but do you think it is because of that, or because the style, or the wine, the grapes are so much riper that you don't necessarily?
I think it's a combination probably of different factors. For sure, when the years are warmer, when they have less acidity, you can release wines a bit younger. That's for sure. You don't need, to get this, because I wouldn't say it's a question of quality. It's more a question of style. Mm-hmm. It's the time on the lees really changes style-wise. You get less effervescence because effervescence is lost through the system. So you get a softer, you get finer bubbles for real. If you wait a long time, you have less concentration of carbon dioxide. So this will create more of a smooth feeling on the palate, and that's why basically a legend that needs to be killed, but not killed, but maybe change and slightly and to make it true. People believe that the finer the bubbles, the better the champagne.
Yes, I use.
But it's actually the opposite.
Okay.
Because back in the days, champagne, if you look at archives, champagne was aged very, very short. 1 year, even some less than 1 year. But 2 years, there was no such things as long aging champagnes. This was not the case. But only the wines born in the best years from the best grapes, the Grand Cru vineyards or the Premier Cru vineyards, were not classified back then, but people knew which vineyards were more expensive to buy from, Those wines could age a bit longer and they would lose some of their effervescence with the system. So when they were tasted afterwards, they would have finer bubbles. But this was a consequence of the better grapes. So actually you need to reverse to understand what was going on. It's actually the better the champagne, the finer the bubbles. Not the finer the bubbles, the better the champagne. Okay. You understand?
Yeah.
It just came from the quality of the grapes on the terroir, used for the champagne that had a bit more potential for aging.
Okay, that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
so. What is it for? I think we can now make champagne that either can age super long, and let's say Ruinart, it's aging much more than it used to. We switch from Crown Cap to cork for the second fermentation, and that's a way to actually extend the reductive state in which we like the wine to be. So in a way, we extend the aging potential of the wine doing so. It's very counterintuitive. Quite a few people would think that cork would bring more oxygen, which is true at the beginning of the life of the champagne, but not true at the end of the life of the champagne. So overall, it's a more resilient closure to keep the champagne.
So how long do you now, in average, keep it under the cork?
Typically 10, 11 years.
Wow.
Maybe 9, sometimes depends, but this is 13 vintage, bottled in 14, and it was disgorged in 23, late 23, so that's 9 years. But some of the wines have been disgorged later, so some of the wines were aging more than 10 years.
Okay, and how do you think that, so you said that the aging affects more the style less than the quality.
Yeah.
Okay. Since we talked about Dom Ruinart, when I say Dom, I usually think about like the other Dom. Yeah.
There's quite a few in Champagne. There's actually a couple more.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about the decisions regarding the vintage champagnes. So what are you looking for, and what are the preconditions for you to declare a vintage?
I think the key for me is potential for aging.
Okay.
There's something I forgot to mention first when we come about style as well. For the wine you leave on the lease for a long time, it needs to have potential for aging. And that could probably, this is the trickiest characteristic to assess when you taste-based wines, the aging potential. You know, it's not only acidity. I think this is a misconception that you need acidity to age well. Actually, if you look back at the greatest vintages of the history of Champagne, they're usually warm vintages, 76, 69, 61, 64, 47. They've been aging amazingly well, and they were super warm. You can also have other examples, opposite, 88, 55, cool vintage, high acid, aging also remarkably well. So, but acidity is not, there's always enough acidity in our region, like to secure some aging. So we don't have that issue. No, it's more about the balance, and the style of the house. Like maybe some years are great for Chardonnay, but not so great for Pinot Noir. I think one aspect of good vintages is the healthiness of the grapes, like little disease, and especially botrytis. We know botrytis hinders aging potential. So we need to have years with low incidence of botrytis. So typically dry and warm.
Yeah, okay.
I would say that. But then it's also your house style. I did not declare 08 nor 12. Right?
Like
two amazing
universally,
vintages.
yeah.
Well, universally, but I didn't like really, I was not in love with the Chardonnay from both years. I find them too austere in 08 and not so expressive in 12. Okay, that's maybe the way we make, our winemaking, because there have been some excellent, I think 08 is an amazing Pinot Noir year, and so is 12, but there are some very, very good examples of Blanc de Blanc. But we made 10, which is probably the best Ruinart we ever made.
Okay.
And 10 was hard for the black grapes, but I thought amazing for Chardonnay. We made 13, which was more universally declared, but we made 17, for instance. 17 was very tricky for black grapes, but Chardonnays in 17 are amazing. Okay. So, it also depends on your house style and maybe the grape variety you choose. And then, so you have more freedom. I think one positive aspect of climate change is that we can declare, in a way, we could declare more often vintages. So you have more possibility to choose which vintage you want to declare. Back in the 80s, if you would miss one vintage for whatever reason, the next good one could be 3 years after. And this means you would have a big hole, in your cellar, and you would be having to release a very young wine. Yeah. Now in Champagne, if you miss one, okay, next year we should be able to make it, in maximum 2 years. So this has given us a bit more flexibility in when to declare vintages, which I think is cool.
Okay. Sometimes you hear these stories, you kind of maybe declare a vintage, or you like universal, not universal, like within the Champagne region, many declare, and they think that this is going to be perfect vintage, will age greatly. And somehow that wine shines in the beginning and kind of, so do you have some examples of that, that you maybe thought, or like your colleagues thought would be like super great vintage, and it kind of...
Well, I could be, I think 96, overall, not especially my, like the Ruinart Champagnes, but overall in Champagne, I think two vintages that were a bit like this is 96 and 08. Like declare like so amazing. But I think they're both misunderstood. And I think 96 is, we can understand why we made this mistake. 96, we reached 10.5 alcohol potential overall in Champagne. And we thought it was, back in the days, 10 potential alcohol or 10.5 was like not often. So we were all excited. And then acidity was 10 in grams of sulfuric acid per liter. Yeah. And we all said, this is amazing, the balance we've never seen, blah, blah. But if you look about it, at it now, with climate change, knowledge, we can probably think, that's my feeling, that we harvested too early, that we had technological maturity, not quite with the acids, but physiological was not there. I think the grapes look ripe, but were unripe. And we should have waited another week and maybe go to 11 and a half or 12. I don't know, like how far we could go in 96. And so, but we were so like happy to have 10 and a half that we all went to pick up, and we picked up too early. And 08 was not dissimilar. And 96, quite a few wines went down quite quickly. They were oxidative quite quickly because I think they lacked the other side of the maturity. And that's 08, some of them less because I think we learned the lesson, but not everybody did. And so it was a bit like this. On another hand, 10. If you would ask me at the beginning of the harvest if we would declare 10, I would say, no, impossible. But when we tasted the base wine, it was like, wow, this has really some good, looks like there's some good potential, so let's make it. And when we released it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. So, yeah, we it can go both ways, you know. It can go both ways.
And what is your favorite vintage?
In the making, already released?
Yeah. Really.
Okay, so 10 has been the best Ruinart, and also it was the same time when we switched from Crown Cap to cork for this one, and I think we got the perfect combination. Between the year and the balance of the year and the cork together, it created an amazing champagne. I do believe that 19, which is still aging, could be better than that.
So we have to look for that.
Yeah, but not now. It will take another probably 5 years before we see, maybe 6 years before we see it. But potentially it has everything to be. I think 19 is the greatest vintages I've seen, and I've been here for quite a few years. I mean, in the region, everything from 19 is, nothing short of amazing. Everything I've tried so far.
Okay, perfect.
Good one.
So we are already at the end of the interview, and there's one last question that I ask every one of my guests, and that is, what is the one wine myth or misunderstanding about wine or champagne that you would like to debunk?
There's so many of them. I would say don't be afraid of aging champagne. I think a lot of people think, I'm not talking connoisseurs who already obviously know about vintage champagne. But champagne has an amazing aging potential, like completely unsurpassed, I think. Maybe some sweet wines do as well. But to optimize it, go for max. Let's say if you want to buy a special champagne to celebrate wedding anniversary, kid's birthday when they turn 18 or 21, buy a magnum of a great vintage champagne, and you would be happy to have listened to this advice because it can age so well, and have a good cellar as well, of course, because champagne might be a bit more fragile. But yeah, like aging potential in champagne is kind of untapped, and quite a few consumers don't know how well this wine can age.
Okay, perfect.
But there are so many. There's
Is there something
we
else?
debunked one before. The finer the bottle, the better the champagne.
That's for me as well. Yeah.
And don't put a silver spoon in the bottle to keep it with bubbles. It doesn't work. We now have an amazing tool called the Coravin sparkling wine system. You can keep your champagne open with this system for like several weeks. And you can drink one glass every week, and that wouldn't be enough. But anyway, it's a great way to keep champagne once it's open and keep it for days and weeks, and it stays the same.
Can we quickly try to debunk? Maybe you will say it's not correct, because I had almost like a fight with one of my viewers who was commenting. He said that champagne grapes are always harvested unripe. And I was trying to kind of argue that they are ripe. They are just like, it's just earlier harvest. Yeah. So, but is that true or not?
But But the correct answer is, and I'm happy to discuss with if he listens to me, what is a ripeness? What does he think ripeness is? I give you an example. I spoke about 96, 10.5 alcohol, 10% acidity. I say again here that those grapes were unripe. as an average. 1988 vintage, 9.2 alcohol potential, 9.6 acidity, harvested late September, fully ripe. So you can be ripe at 9% alcohol and unripe at 10.5.
Yeah.
It depends on the year. So so fully ripe for me is where the combination of technical maturity, so this balance between sugars and acidity, and physiological ripeness, which is kind of new here in Champagne. We've been tasting grapes for like maybe 10 years. I think we're still learning, but that's when you have the best ripeness at that stage.
Okay.
And if you combine both, and that was the case in 24, we harvested quite late. I think you have potential for great aging.
Okay, perfect. So here you go. Take that. Thank you. Thank you for, hosting us and for
My
your
pleasure.
time.
My pleasure.
I understand you're super busy, so I'm really happy to be here.
Always place for Latvians.
Yes.
Paldies.